Economics never described the world as it is. It described the world as we hope it to be. Welcome to another scene from the book, The History of Economics, in 25 scenes. Today I'll tell you about economics in the mirror of humanity, a moment to look back and realize what this discipline has really been studying all along. Across centuries, economics claimed to measure prices, output, and growth. But beneath the charts and models, it was always asking a deeper question. What kind of beings are we if this is the order we create? Every theory carried an image of humanity within it. Rational or impulsive, cooperative or competitive, free or fearful. Economics became less a science of things and more a portrait of ourselves. From labor to utility, from equilibrium to crisis, from planning to freedom, each framework reflected a different hope and a different anxiety. When economists trusted reason, they built systems of balance. When they feared chaos, they designed control. When they worshipped liberty, they stripped away restraint. And each time, reality answered back. This epoch reveals something uncomfortable. Markets do not fail because humans are irrational. They fail because humans are human. Creative, anxious, adaptable, forgetful. Economics, in the end, is not a neutral mirror of reality. It is a moral mirror held up to civilization, showing us not only how we trade, but who we are when we do. For more than 2 centuries, economics rests on a comforting illusion that people are rational, consistent, predictable. The famous Homo economicus moves through models like a perfect machine, weighing options, calculating risks, always choosing the optimal path. A silent actor behind every equation, a ghost who never hesitates and never regrets. The 20th century slowly breaks that illusion. Real people do not optimize. They improvise. They decide under pressure through habit, hope, fear. Memory matters. Imitation matters. Emotion matters. What economists once label irrationality turns out not to be a flaw, but the core of human choice. People do not chase maximum gain. They try to minimize regret. They act with fragments of knowledge shaped by stories, moods, and social cues. This realization forces economics to change its role. It can no longer tell humans how they should behave. It must watch how they actually behave. Psychology enters the picture. So do culture, narrative, even biology. The market stops looking like a neutral machine and starts to resemble a living organism, reactive, emotional, and deeply influenced by human anxiety. The end of the rational myth brings an unexpected humility. Economics stops being the geometry of reason and becomes the anthropology of error. It learns that uncertainty is not noise to be removed, but the rhythm of human life itself. Any theory that forgets this does not explain humanity. It escapes from it. The 21st century is not an age of stability. It is an age of repeated self-recognition through disaster. Every crisis, financial, social, ecological, arrives less as a surprise and more as a revelation. The crash of 2008 tears the mask off greed dressed up as innovation. The pandemic of 2020 exposes how fragile global coordination really is. From about 2023 onward, climate stress and geopolitical shocks blur the line between economy and survival itself. Each moment holds up a mirror, and in it, humanity sees its own reflection. Clever, anxious, short-sighted. Crises never come from the outside. They grow inside the systems meant to prevent them. Deregulation invites speculation. Efficiency breeds fragility. Growth slowly eats the foundations that support it. Our greatest successes quietly plant the seeds of their collapse. Every recovery is therefore haunted by repetition. The hope that this time we will be wiser, calmer, more moral. And every cycle proves otherwise. The irony cuts deep. When systems fail, societies reach instinctively for the same tools that helped cause the failure. More credit, faster expansion, tighter centralization, renewed faith in endless growth. The cure repeats the disease. What we call resilience often hides denial, a refusal to admit that the weakness is human, not technical. Crisis is not the end of order. It is its confession. It reveals how deeply civilization depends on the emotions it tries to exclude. Fear, desire, pride. The economy does not merely reflect human behavior. It is human behavior amplified until it can no longer be ignored. By the late 20th century, the great theoretical machines of economics began to crack. Equilibrium models looked elegant, perfect markets sounded convincing, yet they explained less and less of the world people actually inhabited. Somewhere around the 1980s, a quiet rebellion began. Economists stopped staring only at equations and started watching behavior. They wanted realism, not symmetry, a way of thinking that could survive contact with real life. Behavioral economics led that turn. Thinkers like Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, and Richard Thaler showed that people are not broken calculators. They are emotional storytellers, making sense of uncertainty through habits, biases, and rules of thumb. Decisions are shaped by fear, hope, and memory, not by perfect logic. What once looked like irrationality turned out to be deeply human. At the same time, institutional economics widened the lens. Markets were no longer treated as natural phenomena, but as social constructions, held together by law, trust, custom, and shared belief. Without institutions, prices mean nothing. Without memory, contracts dissolve. Ecological and social economics went further, reintroducing limits modernity preferred to forget. Growth is not infinite. Every expansion consumes resources, attention, and moral patience. No economy floats above the planet or outside the values that justify it. Together, these approaches pulled economics back toward humanity. The machine became an organism, adaptive, fragile, and error-prone. The dream of self-regulation faded, replaced by feedback and learning. There is no pure market, just as there is no pure human being. Both are mixtures of intelligence and illusion. Economics, at its most honest, finally admits this. Civilization advances not by mastery, but by learning from its own mistakes. The old certainties didn't collapse all at once. They simply stopped answering the questions people actually had. As faith in fixed laws faded, economics began asking things that once sounded almost embarrassing for a hard science. Why do people follow rules at all? Why do they cooperate when selfishness looks profitable? Why do they repeat behaviors that clearly harm them, not once but generation after generation? Suddenly, algebra wasn't enough. The answers lived elsewhere. Economics started borrowing openly from psychology to understand choice, from sociology to track norms, and from systems theory to see how feedback loops bind humans and their tools together. Rationality stopped being a stable assumption and became a moving target, shaped by algorithms, incentives, propaganda, and the digital environments in which decisions now happen. In this world, prediction loses its old authority. The future is no longer something you calculate, it is something you interpret. Competing stories, fears, and expectations matter as much as data. Economics begins to look less like physics and more like ecology, or even weather forecasting. Patterns exist, but they shift. Models guide, but they never settle. That change quietly redefines the economist's role. No longer a lawgiver announcing how the world must behave, he becomes an interpreter, someone reading systems that think, react, and evolve. Economics drifts back toward the human sciences, finally admitting what it long resisted. Behavior cannot be understood without understanding the myths people live by. What used to be called irrationality is no longer an error term. It is simply humanity in motion, adapting, improvising, and searching for meaning inside the machinery it created. Every great intellectual journey ends where it began, with the question of who we really are. After centuries of modeling systems, fixing markets, and blaming institutions, economics arrives at an uncomfortable conclusion. The problem is not volatility or inefficiency. It is us. Not the market's logic, nor the state's reach, but the human mind that refuses to see its own limits. Rationality was meant to free humanity from superstition. Instead, it built new idols: numbers, growth, models that claimed neutrality while quietly shaping belief. And yet, the same mind that distorts the world is the only one capable of correcting it. Stripped of mechanical pride, economics slowly rediscovers ethics. It is forced to ask not only what works, but what is right. Systems are no longer judged by efficiency alone, but by how well they protect dignity, fairness, and endurance. The moral dimension, once exiled as unscientific, returns, not at the margins, but at the center. This shift offers no redemption story. Human flaws do not disappear. Greed, fear, ambition, hope, they remain constant. But within that tension lies resilience, the capacity to learn, to cooperate, to design systems that admit weakness instead of denying it. The new economics no longer dreams of perfection. It dreams of survival with integrity. Humanity emerges as both the greatest risk and the last hope of civilization, saboteur and builder at once. And economics, at its most honest, finally accepts this duality and learns to work with it rather than pretending it can ever escape it. Freedom is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be carried. That is the quiet lesson running through the whole history of economics. Every system we build reflects who we are at that moment: our hopes, our fears, our blind spots. When we forget that, numbers harden into dogma and models turn into cages. The economy is not a machine that breaks. It is a mirror that answers back. And each crisis, each reform, each new theory is civilization asking itself the same uneasy question again. How much truth are we willing to face about ourselves? If progress has any meaning left, it lies not in control or prediction, but in responsibility. The courage to design systems that remember human limits without surrendering human dignity. In the next scene, we move deeper into that mirror. We ask what happens when economics stops pretending to be neutral and starts shaping culture, identity, and power itself. Because the most dangerous illusion is not failure. It is the belief that we have finally understood ourselves.